Welcome to TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John, that's my cohort and commentary Ashton, and this is our NXT review. I gotta say, folks, I loved it. I loved NXT tonight. I thought it was a really fun episode. Some interesting storyline progression with some feuds. And really, the one thing that I know you're probably all waiting for us to talk about, the main event tonight, Roderick Strong versus Bobby Roode for the NXT Championship. Burner, guys. I loved it. Probably one of my favorite NXT title matches in recent memory, if I'm being honest. And I've got quite a bit to say about it and just everything surrounding the NXT title picture. But this ain't just a one-man show. Let me hand it over to my cohort and commentary and get some of his thoughts. What did you think of NXT tonight?
You know, believe it or not, John, tonight's NXT only featured 2 wrestling matches. That's such a rarity for NXT because we already talked before when discussing Lucha Underground, who was kind of growing to be known for this 3-match formula where they would have exactly 3 matches on every single show. And they were always good, but it was a little bit on the repetitive side. Well, now, I mean, we used to talk about when we were discussing that 3-match formula that NXT was wildly variant because they would have anywhere from 1 to up to 6 matches on their show. And that we really kind of acknowledged, like, NXT does a really good job of jamming a lot of matches into an hour of programming. Well, they went the opposite direction here. We started with a good solid match and we finished with, I think it was like a good 25 to 30 minute match in the main event, Strong Rude, and I enjoyed both matches, although I do have some complaints about the first one, but that main event was really good, should have been at a takeover, quite frankly, and all of the interviews and video packages that we got in between those matches were really solid.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm really looking forward to unpacking this episode and, again, having conversations about some of the wider implications for the matches and where they find themselves. So with that said, let's get right into our first segment, Heat of the Night. Really no heats of the night, no nitpicks. What about you, my man?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to call it a heat of the night, but I do have a nitpick regarding the first match of the night, which, you know, I mean, we go chronologically, so we would open with this match anyway, so we might as well talk about it. I am not a fan of the way that this match was kind of booked, in the sense that it made Hideo look stupid and kind of careless, and it felt almost overbooked to the point that it didn't feel realistic at all.
Yeah, and you know, here's the thing. I don't think you're wrong. If anything, I would just pile on a criticism of my own. I feel like the roles should have almost been reversed here. Hideo going in alone and trying to fight 2-on-1 odds, how am I supposed to boo that? Now, again, I get that they gave it proper context. It was more that Hideo snubbed Ono, but I still feel like I would have flipped the script and have Ono fight this battle and have Hideo maybe be out for longer than he should have been given whatever he ate or whatever happened, and then there just kind of be tension there. I just found the whole thing to be rather weird. There's tension between these two guys, but like, Hideo is a competitor, and you'd think he'd know, okay, let me make the tag. I don't know, just something about it, like, I couldn't buy it. And I definitely agree with your aforementioned criticisms. Like, it made Hideo look bad. Like, and this is a guy that should be looking nothing but badass and, like, on his game right now, given that he's able to have this run. So, yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from this week.
Yeah, I you know, normally I like the way that NXT handles turns, but I feel like Hideo's imminent heel turn is being overbooked and dragged out way too much.
That's another thing, too. I mean, maybe this is just me being petty, because I get that you can only pack so much into one show, especially when the NXT Championship, and rightfully so in this case, was given so much priority. But I was waiting for a bigger payoff. Like, I was waiting for the camera to pan from Sanity as they were going up the ramp back to Ono and Hideo and to see some kind of altercation, and that never came. And I don't know, that left me kind of deflated, because I'm like, usually after a match like that, you usually see the crescendo, right? So if that wasn't it, where the hell is it going to come? What's going to be the context of it? But, I mean, this is only the first of, I'm sure, many discussions we're going to have tonight, because, I mean, they did hit us with quite a bit, even though it was only 2 matches. So that's all I've got to say about that. Is there anything you want to add? Because it was your nitpick.
No, I don't think I have anything to add. I think really at the end of the day, I did enjoy this episode of NXT, and I think it's mostly just because the worst part of the show in my eyes was this first match.
Right, so it's like this was kind of a misstep, but you get it out of the way early kind of thing. So with that said, let us get right into our NXT review. We open up with a video package hyping up Strong Rude, the first of quite a bit of promotion throughout the night for this title match. And, sets a great tone, I think. Gets you pumped, thinking, is this going to be Roddy's night? Then we go to NXT. We do start with our tag match. We already talked about it a little bit in our preceding segment of Heat of the Night. So I will say, I thought it was a good back and forth affair. A bit clunky with the booking, as we already mentioned. I did like the finish, though, in the sense of Alexander Wolf sacrificing himself and Killian Dane getting the pin on Hideo, especially given what we would learn later in the night in a separate segment. We see that Killian Dane, he is being built for something. So I do think in that sense, this was an intelligent finish. I just wanted more from it, I think, after the fact. Do you have anything you want to add about this match that we haven't already kind of established?
No, like I said, I got my complaint out of the way. I just wanted to kind of talk about how I'm not really happy with the way that this was booked. You know what, though? I do also have another nitpick regarding this match, and it's not even just in this match. It's something that's kind of become a trend, and I figured I would let it go the first time, and then I kind of picked up on it happening a second time, and this match is actually the third time I've heard it said. Percy Watson keeps on referring to Hideo Itami's moves as Kobayashi style. I don't think Percy Watson knows that Hideo Itami literally is the Kobayashi he's referring to. Hideo Itami's real name is Kenta Kobayashi.
Yeah, either Percy doesn't know it or he thinks he's being cute and giving a nod, to those more hardcore fans that do know it. But yeah.
I feel like that would be like referring to a Finn Balor move as Devitt style. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. It is pretty weird.
Percy, just, if you're going to make insider jokes, don't make references to a character whose real name is what you're referring to.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. I think, the finish was kind of stupid. We saw Ono kind of get into a brawl on the outside, and that led to Hideo not being able to get the tag. And then even after Ono does get back on the apron, because he wasn't there for Itami to tag earlier, Itami just flat out refuses to tag him after that. We see Ono kind of trying to talk some sense into Itami, but then he eats a knee to the face, and it knocks him off the apron again. So Itami just kind of trying to 2-on-1 beast through this match himself. He gets Alexander Wolf up for a GTS, but Killian Dane gets a blind tag. GTS, but it doesn't matter because Wolf isn't even in the match. Dane hits a running, flying crossbody and wins the match for his team.
Yeah, and again, I did like this finishing sequence because it puts the spotlight on Dane, which we know is relevant given that he's brought up in a later segment on this show. So I think on that level, this worked. But again, I do agree with everything we talked about in the preceding segment of this podcast, with the booking being a bit clunky. So with that said, I guess we can move on. So what came after this?
Well, after this, we got an Ember Moon interview. She talks about how she's ready to earn her way back into an NXT championship match with Asuka. And then Ruby Rose shows up, or Ruby Riott. I don't know why I said Ruby Rose. Ruby Riott shows up. I know why I said Ruby Rose. It's because that's in my notes. Ruby Riott shows up, and she reminds Ember Moon that Ember and Nikki Cross have already had their chances at Asuka, and they weren't able to make it happen. But Ruby hasn't gotten a proper one-on-one match with Asuka. She wants it. So Ember pretty much just says that she wants Asuka, but anyone who's willing to get in her warpath, she has no problem stepping in the ring with.
I was really picking up what Ruby was saying. I just wish that she was booked stronger in those two, triple threat matches so that she'd have more of a leg to stand on. I think it'd be a more interesting story if she was the last one eliminated in both of those matches and yet she still kept like being committed to this oversight because, oh, well, Nikki and Asuka, that's where the money is. They're killing each other, and Ember's got the story, and then Ruby Riot's like, well, what about me? I could go to distance with Asuka. But regardless, I think it's good enough. I think it's clear what they're setting up to. Ruby Riot in a #1 contenders match should be a solid match. You know, it was kind of weird that they almost gave like this press conference atmosphere to Ember while everybody's kind of training around. You know, it's whatever. But I thought it was a harmless enough segment. It moves the train forward, if you will. So nothing more you can say than that.
Yeah. Okay. So then we had a recap of the Asuka Nikki Cross Last Woman Standing match from last week. And that pretty much just wraps up that story because then once that video package or recap ends, we get into a Drew McIntyre video package where they again kind of replay the audio of him talking about how he's saying that he has all the raw talent and then he can lay the smackdown on anyone he chooses. But at the end of the day, his options, he ended up going with NXT because he felt like that was his best choice. So that was just a video package, really basic stuff. And then we get an interview, Christy, I believe is her name, on the scene with Drew McIntyre. And he talks about guys like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens who held the NXT title and were sort of in a way chosen as the leaders of the pro wrestling industry moving forward. And he wants to enter that lineage.
I like it. I really like the way that Drew worded this whole thing. You know, normally with guys, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because I mean, you know, it does make sense and you can buy it every time. But with most guys, it's simply about, oh, I want to be the champion because it's the title in NXT. But I feel like Drew goes a step beyond that. And he talks about what the title means in the grander scheme of things. And I think I like that because I think Drew as a character in this promo recognizes, you know, this, even though NXT is a hot brand, it's still a developmental brand. You're here so that you can graduate to other levels. I want to graduate to other levels almost as like a valedictorian, if you will. I want to lead WWE, and I like that. I really liked how he approached this promo. It is brought to his attention that other people do have interest in the NXT Championship, like Killian Dane. That's why I was saying in the preceding segment that, you know, the way the finish was, it makes sense in the context of, okay, now Killian Dane's in this conversation. Clearly something's going to have to be done about this. So I'm assuming, much like with Ember Moon and Ruby Riott, we're going to get a #1 contenders match probably between Drew and Killian Dane, since, you know, he got brought up in this conversation, which should be an interesting match. But yeah, dude, it really is looking like McIntyre is getting that Brooklyn 3 spot, it would seem like. And we'll have more to say about that later, because, I mean, I do definitely want to talk to you about that. But in the meantime, I thought it was a good promo and nothing more to say. Do you have anything you want to add?
I don't think so. I think that, yeah, we pretty much, Drew McIntyre, I feel this disconnect with him right now, not because I think he sucks or anything. I think he's a very good performer. I've always been a big fan of his, but in NXT and just within the confines of what he's done in NXT so far, I really don't understand how he's earned an NXT title shot. And I'm sure he's going to end up going one-on-one with Killian Dane to kind of up that credibility, but I'm not going to be that invested in him if he does end up with the Brooklyn title shot. I'm just not going to be that into it.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Again, I have more to say later because I want to package that all with my musings and just my thoughts while watching the NXT Championship match. So for now, let's move on. What came after this?
We had a recap of Ciampa's turn on Gargano, and we got the announcement that Johnny Gargano is officially coming back for his big return next week.
See, now here's the first hot button conversation right here. I'm going to field it over to you because I know you have given Johnny Gargano, well, really both members of DIY to be fair, but we've both talked about, and you've especially taken the reins on praising Johnny Gargano as a babyface. We've talked about how they're going to book this, given some revelations about Ciampa's health. What do you think about Gargano coming back next week, and what do you think the plan's going to be for him long term?
I've already said it before. I genuinely want Johnny Gargano to be an NXT championship contender. I want him to be I want him to be that guy. I want Johnny Gargano, while Ciampa is gone, I want Johnny Gargano to rise to the top of the ranks of NXT, quite frankly, I want Johnny Gargano to become NXT champion so that when Ciampa does come back, we can have that feud, but we can get the title involved in it as well. I want that to be everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for the time being, all I'm going to say is that I agree with you, but I'm going to be bringing this point up again later in the show, because again, a lot of my musings come regarding the NXT championship, but I am very excited, very intrigued about Gargano returning next week. It's just a shame that Ciampa is going to be out for a good while, but if they have the same mindset as you do, partner, they can still get a lot of mileage out of this, and they can make an absence a narrative strength. So we'll see what NXT has planned. For now, let's move on.
All right, so up next, we had Kayla Braxton interviewing the Iconic Duo. Apparently, it was Billie Kay's birthday recently, and the only person who celebrated it with her and bought her a present was Peyton Royce. All she wants, John, is cake.
Which, is that really such an unreasonable request?
No, of course not, especially not for someone as iconic as these two.
Exactly. I mean, Billie Kay is amazing enough that she deserves her own cake. In fact, given her emotional suffering, I'd say we go one step farther, and it should be a custom-made cake, probably with figurines of her and Peyton hugging, rooted in the cake. Just go crazy with it. But yeah, they're lamenting the lack of appreciation that Billie Kay came into this world and made it suck less. But what catches my eye, as I almost sound hypocritical disregarding Billie Kay, is an argument that Andrade's having in the background. So thankfully, the Iconic Duo, they finish up their business. They're going to just go do Iconic Duo things. And then we join Andrade with Thea Trinidad kind of laying into him. No tranquilo. You got to get your career back on track. And she leaves, and the interviewer's like, "Oh, Andrade, who are you talking to? Who was that woman? Loca Chica, I think it was, or Loco Chica." So pretty much.
No, I don't think he actually said Chica. I'm pretty sure he literally just said Loca.
Okay. I could have sworn he said Chica, but either way, pretty much saying, yeah, crazy. This person's crazy. And dude, I adore Andrade. When we did our inaugural Fave 5 video, that Andrade was high up, not only my favorite NXT performer, but I think my number either 2 or 3 in my top 10. So very, very high, very appreciative for this update, because I miss Andrade every week he's not on. I don't really talk about it much because I like to keep the focus on what's actually on the show, but I feel his absence every week he's not on. So I'll take this crumb. I'll nibble on it for the next 2 weeks, or however long it takes to get another update, and I'll sustain myself on it. But I am very intrigued by this storyline. I think the undercard of NXT is getting ready to blow up because there's just so much going on in the main event scene. And again, that's going to lead to the bigger discussion that I want to have about the NXT Championship. So I got nothing else to say about this. I love Andrade. Unless you have anything to add, we can move on.
Okay, up next we had a recap of Bianca Belair's victory over Aaliyah to earn entry into the Mae Young Classic.
Yeah, you and I watched that match. We gave our thoughts on Bianca Belair. For those of you wondering, we were essentially meh. We're like, she's right where she needs to be, very green. Is there something there? Yeah, I mean, we're not totally discounting her, but she needs a lot of polish, a lot of refinement, a lot of work, which is why she's here. Tournament ready? I'd personally say no, but she's getting the spot. She's probably going to be eliminated in the first round. It's whatever. So
see, my concern is that she won't be eliminated in the first round because they want to make her name out of her.
Yeah, and you're right to be concerned. And see, my concern about that concern manifesting itself is that if she goes farther than the first round, she's going to be exposed. And I don't know. I don't know. I just very tentative with Bianca Belair. Because, see, that's the thing. I like the packaging, the EST of NXT, like the theme, like just the overall aesthetic. The in-ring stuff, though, isn't quite there yet. I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't mean this in the most insulting way, because I dial it back a bit, but to some degree, and I want to emphasize some, I got Dana Brooke vibes a little bit. So I just kind of want to rough out those edges, buff them out. Again, give her that refinement, whatever. But that's all I'm going to say about Bianca Belair. Unless you have anything to add, your own personal thoughts on the match, we can move on.
All right, let's just move on because we already kind of, I mean, you know, it's funny because we actually didn't discuss it on air. We had a private conversation about what we thought of the match, and just to kind of air my feelings, I like Bianca Belair, but you could really tell in the match that she was the greener of the two women. I'm not the biggest fan of Aaliyah, but it seemed like there were multiple instances where she had something that she was trying to do, and Bianca didn't really know how to handle it or sell it or bump for it or anything like that. So it just kind of felt like it was a little bit sloppy. I definitely would have preferred Aaliyah in the Mae Young Classic if one of them had to be in it. But at the end of the day, I was hoping that the Mae Young Classic would just be like, you know, all experienced, talented women that maybe weren't necessarily already under WWE contract. Because, like, the Cruiserweight Classic, the people that were in that match that were already under WWE contract were Gargano and Ciampa. And that's it. And those guys are amazing at what they do. So it would have been nice, like, if you had to have women from NXT, from the Performance Center in the Mae Young Classic, it would have been nice if it would have been more established veteran talents rather than, oh, let's take the greenest woman we have who's got a little athleticism to her, have her win an exhibition match to get into it, and then have her in it.
Right. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Because, I mean, to me, it's funny because in the same breath that Bianca Belair qualifies, I watched Kairi Hojo. Now, Kairi, I want to say Sane is how you pronounce it?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, for once I'm not ignorant. Thank you. You know, and I saw her video and I'm like, that's where the hype is. You know what I mean? And we haven't even gotten like any word, and I don't know if we will on the YouTube channel, I would like to, of people like Toni Storm and others. So, like, that's where the focus should be. Not trying to diss Bianca Belair, but you are where you are right now in the pecking order. I hope that she can move up. I hope that she can better her game and really become a prospect. I want everybody to become a prospect on a certain level. But whether she does or not, only time will tell. So unless you have anything to add, we can move on.
Okay, up next, we had a big video package hyping up Roderick Strong versus Bobby Roode, you know, recapping who is Roderick Strong mini doc, the promo that Roddy, you know, was talking about how he opened up to the NXT universe and they welcomed him and accepted him with open arms. And then, of course, Bobby Roode rudely interrupting and then, of course, asking Roderick Strong's wife backstage if she wanted to get with a real man. Just really messed up. A little brawl they had, and it all built up to the main event of the evening. Roderick Strong versus Bobby Roode for the NXT Championship.
Well, as I've been alluding to pretty much all podcast, I do have a lot to say about this, but going to make you guys wait a little bit longer because I want to get Ashton's thoughts first on this title match. So
dude, I literally have like 10 lines of notes for this match, so I have a lot to say as well.
All right, you go first, man. Floor is yours.
Okay, just for the sake of simplicity, because a lot of the time I have a really difficult time recalling what I was thinking in a moment. A lot of the time I'll even say stuff during Raw that John will pick up on that I don't even remember saying half the time. So again, for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to read what I wrote in my notes and try and put it into context. So I have Roderick Strong versus Bobby Roode. Roddy looked really strong right up until that steel step spot where he was climbing up the steel steps, and then Bobby swiped his leg and his other leg fell in like the hole that's created between the steel steps and the ring itself. And Bobby just completely took over from that point. He was just thrashing Roderick's knee the entire match after that spot. And Roderick had a couple of moments where he got a nice little flurry of offense. The first one was Bobby had him in like a modified ankle lock where he was twisting and torquing the knee and the ankle. And Roderick kicked him off, and then he had a nice flurry where he hit a couple backbreakers, but none of them really lasted that long because Bobby goes right back to the knee, and Roderick just kept on having to fight from underneath. They kept showing Marina, his wife, Marina Shafir, the MMA fighter, and she just kept on, like, she started, she was like, she was supportive, she was like kind of happy, she was like into it, And then it was like once the leg thing happened, she got kind of sad. And then as Bobby kept on like going after the knee, she was visibly pissed off about 3/4 of the way into this match, maybe even earlier than that. And I was wondering if they were maybe going to have her like stand up and get in Bobby's face and maybe slap him or something like that, because they were focusing on her reactions to this match so much. It was great. I loved her facial expressions. She did a great job of really selling the seriousness of the match. The one kind of moment that really stood out to me from Roderick was that he hit a sheer drop backbreaker on Bobby Roode using the top turnbuckle instead of his knee because of how messed up his knee was. And then Bobby does end up hitting a glorious DDT in the middle of the ring, but it only got a 2 count. And I feel like this is the second or third match in a row now where Bobby has been defending the title, hit a glorious DDT after a good like 15, 20 minutes, and it only got a 2 count. So I actually have in my notes, glorious DDT nerfed. So maybe the glorious DDT isn't as effective anymore as it was when he was getting pinfalls and victories off of one back in the day, a year or two ago. So then Roddy did end up hitting the end of Heartache, and he did get a 3 count, but Bobby's foot was under the rope before the ref hit for 3. So it was a legit false finish where Roderick Strong's theme was actually playing and everything. Like the friggin' announcer even said, "And your winner, and new." But then the referee, which was great, Drake Wirtz, who's just great. His facial expressions, his ability to sell all of this stuff as real and legit is great. But yeah, he cleared everything up. He told Roderick that he didn't actually win. He told Bobby that it was a 2 count. He told the announcer that the match was still happening. He called it all off, and then he continued the match. And as soon as he continues the match, Bobby went out to the outside and hit Roderick Strong with a glorious DDT right in front of his wife and mother. And it's worth noting that while all of this calamity was going on with the ref trying to get everything correct, Roddy was standing on the apron, and Bobby ran over and clobbered him from behind and knocked him out of the ring and onto the floor. So that kind of set up his opportunity to go out there, hit him with the glorious DDT, roll him back into the ring, hit him with another glorious DDT, and pick up the victory. Bobby Roode is still your NXT champion, but it was a really, really well done false finish there with Bobby getting his foot under the rope. After the match, the crowd wasn't even booing, I noticed. They were just silent. They were just completely crushed by the false finish and then Bobby winning anyway. The title run that Bobby Roode is on right now is like the antithesis to what Bo Dallas's title run was a few years ago, because people just don't care about him. They want him to lose. They want him to lose the title. But it's not that rabid, I despise your face heat like what Bo Dallas was getting a few years ago. It's more close to apathy than heat. And as soon as he leaves, you see Roderick roll out of the ring and hug his wife, and that's kind of the image that we go out on.
Is there anything else you want to say before I really take the floor here and let loose all my thoughts?
I just really enjoyed the match. Bobby Roode's psychology was really strong. His constant working over of Roderick's knee definitely got him that heel heat, but people just don't care about him. And Roderick's babyface fire and passion and desire and selling are all super duper on point. I absolutely adore NXT babyface Roderick Strong, and I have to specify that because I've seen Roderick Strong as a babyface in other companies, and it's never been better than it is here in NXT. So those are my thoughts. Now I'm curious what you have to say, my friend.
First of all, I have to thank you because you set up the table perfectly for everything I'm going to say. Because you already mentioned, and I did want to bring this up because I've become very critical of him, and then this is coming from a guy that used to be a huge Bobby Roode fan. I've kind of gotten over it, but I will say this was his best outing in recent memory, and I think that's one, because he's working with such a phenomenal babyface, thanks to, NXT and just everything coming together at the right time. And two, like you said, I thought the psychology was brilliant. I think it was next level because not only are you taking away a man's limb as vital as his leg, but we know that Roddy uses the legs a lot as the messiah of the backbreaker, all that stuff. Roddy is tremendous as a babyface, and I love the build to this. But that brings me to my biggest point, and where you and I think, are really about to have this conversation here. Because this, to me, throughout the whole night, and I'm curious if Chad has any thoughts about this, and Draven G already kind of mentioned, kind of jumping the gun for me, McIntyre versus Roots just sounds pretty meh for me. I feel like the build that this match got, you would have believed that you were at a takeover. And we've been talking, we mentioned it earlier in the show, that it seems like McIntyre is going to get that Brooklyn 3 spot. And I like Drew. I think he's got an amazing look. His in-ring work's on point. My two biggest criticisms of Drew, I mean, first of all, I share yours, that I don't really think he's done enough in a kayfabe sense for me to believe it. But two, and maybe this is just me, I'm not really buying him as a babyface. Like, I feel like you look as he does and you're as aggressive as he is. And I don't know, is he a horrible babyface? No. But I don't think people are nearly as into him as they are into Roderick, which brings me to my biggest point. I would have flipped this, and I told you this in private conversation, but I told you I was going to mention it again. I feel like this should have been Drew's title shot tonight, and Roderick's whole story with the family and the hard past as a child and everything. I mean, if that isn't Brooklyn 3 worthy, nothing is. Because, and see, this is where I'm kind of projecting here. I'm not saying this is NXT's fault. This is obviously on me. But NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, I mean, from the first one, just has that kind of magic in the air. I feel like for Brooklyn 1, it was Bayley winning the NXT Women's Championship. Honestly, couldn't tell you what happened for Brooklyn 2, so maybe it already kind of went off the rails. But, like...
Brooklyn, I think Brooklyn 2 is Nakamura beating Joe.
Oh, yeah, there you go. And here, you'd feel like, okay, well, it just seems like it's going to be, Roderick's moment. But if they're going to give it to McIntyre, not that he doesn't deserve any of that. Again, it's not about the performer. But when you look at where we are, when you look at the environment and you look at the context, I feel like Roderick would have been a better choice long term, because the crowd is connected with him in ways that I hope that they would have connected with Hideo, and they totally shit on him in his TakeOver match, with Cassius, with No Way Jose, and I feel like they finally got it with Roderick, and you blew your load on a random NXT episode, and this was a phenomenal title match, right? And it's just, I really don't know how to feel about that. I definitely have my reservations about that. The other thing I did want to mention that kind of ties into this, I told you also privately, I feel like a story is going on. And it's funny that you mentioned that it's taking more glorious DDTs to get the job done. I feel like there's a story going on in the latter half of this title reign where Bobby Roode comes closer and closer to losing the championship. In his match with Hideo, I feel like Hideo actually did get the GTS, but Roode happened to fall to the floor, so he couldn't capitalize right away. Here, it was even worse because Roode couldn't get his body to fall to the floor, but at the last second, he got his foot underneath the rope. But a 3 count was still registered. So Roode was almost still screwed, but it was a false finish. So I feel like each title defense, it's like you're just hanging on a little bit more. You're finding a way to just still grip onto that rope. And I'm feeling like McIntyre, I'm not saying this definitively, but it just feels like McIntyre might be the one to finally kick him off that ledge and send him down, and finally we've ended the reign of Roode. And I don't know how I feel about that. Again, there's a lot of upside to McIntyre, but when I look at the undercard, right, of Dane and Andrade, when I think about where do those guys look more believable against a McIntyre who's this thoroughbred, this powerhouse that just imposes his will, or against Roderick, who is just this guy that has an amazing work rate and everything, but has this really sympathetic edge. Yeah, I think I'd feel more for him, for Roderick being against the Andrades and the Danes, whereas if McIntyre is going to be the next champion, is much of my interest going to return in the main event scene? And I've got to tell you skeptically, I don't know. So now that I've gotten some of my bigger points off my chest about this story with Roode's title reign, closer and closer each time to losing, and McIntyre's prospects as champion, I mean, what are you thinking about it all? Let me guide the discussion here. What do you think about McIntyre being the one to end the reign and being our next NXT champion? Does that get you at all invested in the main event scene going forward?
No, it doesn't. But at the same time, I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen. First of all, we don't know for sure if McIntyre is going to be the Brooklyn opponent. And even if he is, I think it would be highly foolish for NXT to end the Bobby Roode title reign for the sake of Drew McIntyre. Not because Drew isn't worth it at all, but because Drew isn't worth it right now in the confines of NXT, in the current context that he would be winning the title in. Because to me, if you're going to take the title off Bobby Roode, who's had this long, drawn-out heel run where all of his title defenses have felt super fluky, and he's like all of his big wins, it's felt like the other guy injured himself on accident and he just capitalized on it. And like you said, Bobby has only kicked out by seemingly getting lucky or just barely having the wherewithal to avoid getting pinned. You build up all this heat, and then you give it to somebody with literally no build whatsoever in McIntyre.
And see, this is where we kind of come full circle, because I mentioned that I was going to bring Gargano back up. I think you should have Roode beat McIntyre, and either, because Draven did mention this name in chat, and I'll be honest, I forgot about him for a hot second, either you give the title to Aleister Black, which I think could be fascinating given the character.
Aleister Black, honestly, if they're not going to do the Gargano build, which I would love but does seem unlikely, if they're not going to pull the trigger on that, I would love to see Aleister Black get it. As much as I would prefer the Gargano story, because then you've got an even bigger story overlying that with Ciampa coming back in early 2018, Aleister Black is a perfectly acceptable second choice in my eyes.
And absolutely, but I'm with you that I really want to emphasize here they should go with Gargano, because here's the thing, he is the only one that I think can not only match Strong's babyface momentum, but potentially even exceed it, because he's got the story of, I've been betrayed, my world was destroyed, and I'm slowly rebuilding it again, and I want the center of my world to be the NXT championship. And he goes and he does his thing, and with how he fucking sells, if Roode would employ even a quarter of the psychology he did in this match, Gargano would be selling his ass off, and we would all be pleading for him to find a way to win. So my personal hope, and again, nothing against Black, I think that dude is fucking money, and I want to make that perfectly clear. But if I can English, where does my interest in the main event scene of NXT come in? With Gargano as champion, Ciampa is the most immediate challenger, and if Gargano hangs on, I can buy Andrade beating him, I can buy Killian Dane beating him, but if Ciampa wins, you've got a heel infinitely more interesting than Roode holding the belt. You can't lose. But I think you got to be patient and play your cards right. I'm not that enthused if you put the belt on McIntyre. I do think that Gargano is 1A, your best prospect, and then Black comes in at 1B for me, because he's excellent, but in a totally different way than Gargano. So, yeah, I just hope they go with one of those two guys, because, again, I think everything you said about McIntyre, I echo, and I'm into everything in NXT right now, even the tag division, because I know TM61 is going to be making a comeback soon. But, like, the main event scene for me is kind of the weakest, and, again, this is a phenomenal championship match, but I don't really care for Roode as champion. I have that apathy that you articulated earlier, and I feel like Gargano being champion or Black would inject some much-needed anticipation and excitement in the scene. So, yeah, that was really all I wanted to unburden myself with and get off my chest, because I was just watching this match tonight, and I'm like, damn, Roddy is so fucking good. I almost feel like he got robbed, and not even in the sense of, oh, he should be NXT champion, but in the sense of he should have had his takeover moment, because it just, that's just really my biggest thought coming out of this. Big ups to Roderick Strong. Big ups to NXT for making a compelling babyface Roderick Strong. And yeah, Roode, this was one of his better title defenses in recent memory. So now I'm just kind of prepping my body for McIntyre, Roode, Brooklyn 3, if I'm honest. So I guess that's where we're headed next. Do you have any other thoughts you want to give about this title match?
I don't think so. I think that you articulated it really well. I honestly, the whole let's build up Gargano and give him the NXT title just in time for Ciampa to return and ruin his life is a more compelling version of building up the AOP and having them go undefeated in order to bring back TM61 and have them get this big triumphant win over the AOP as this big return. Like they're two sides of the same story. It's on one side you've got this dominant heel faction with a returning babyface team that's got this triumphant feel to them, and like can they kind of put it all together in a way that no one ever has before, including them in 2 or 3 attempts already. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got this triumphant babyface who everybody loves and everybody just wants to see succeed. And he's finally succeeding in the best way possible. And then his former best friend who ruined his life returns to continue the damage.
And then Candice LeRae goes in James's arms because she knows what it's like to be with a real man. So yeah, that all works out perfectly for me. I think that story's fantastic. And yeah, I hope NXT goes that route because all kidding aside, Gargano and Ciampa could be the most money feud NXT has had on its hands in recent memory. And I think in that case, especially given that these aren't part-time guys, these are both men are going to show up tomorrow morning, get that championship involved. Absolutely. Put everything into it. I hope they do, dude. I really, really do. And hell, there are many other alternative scenarios. Now that we have had established 2-time NXT champions in Joe and Nakamura, who's to say that Rude wouldn't be the next one if McIntyre did beat him? You know, I really don't know where NXT is going to go or who ultimately is going to have the belt and have that next great run that reinvigorates our interest. Again, I hope it's Gargano, and Black wouldn't be, you know, a bad guy either. But that's all on NXT. So for now, that's all I've got to say about that. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I do actually want to toss out a suggestion. I think another really interesting option, if they do decide to not immediately put the title on McIntyre at Brooklyn, would be to build Gargano not just over the next couple of months, but over a while, like over a good period of time, and maybe even throw Aleister Black at Bobby Roode and have him maybe like win or lose via disqualification or count out because somebody else maybe interferes in the match and beats the hell out of one of the two guys. Maybe it would make more sense to have someone like beat the hell out of Aleister Black so he wins, but via disqualification, so Bobby retains, and then bracket them off so that you have Aleister going after this guy that cost him the NXT title, and Bobby's still champion, so that we can have the Gargano-Rude takeover match in like February or March or January, like when Ciampa's primed to return. Like maybe even do your best to kind of hold off on it until whatever the name is of the takeover that's happening at WrestleMania weekend. Like that, to me, having Gargano win the title only for him to be standing at the top of the ramp celebrating, and then Ciampa just sidewinds him, just destroys him from nowhere. That's the perfect note to go out on, and that's the note that would have the wrestling world talking in a way that they would be saying like, oh, beat that WrestleMania, you're not going to.
Exactly. Yeah, I love how your mind works because, I mean, again, excellent spread with Gargano and Ciampa, but what I like about what you added is you made sure that Aleister Black gets protected, because here's the thing. If we're already saying that McIntyre can't be denied a title opportunity, I mean, Aleister Black, his most recent victory was against Cassius Ohno. So, like, yeah, he's got to be doing.
Who's Drew McIntyre ever beaten? Am I right?
Exactly. Like, goddamn. But, yeah, man, I like that you really went out of your way to protect Aleister Black, because I think that is important. With that said, like, and beyond that, is there anything else you want to add, or can we get to our next segment?
I think we can get to our next segment, brother.
High spots and low shots. Oh, God. You know what? No, I thought I was going to have to do it with a heavy heart. No, I'm not going to give the person I was really going to give my low shot to. My low shot is going to be against Billy. Is going to be Billy Kay, because she's sad because she doesn't have cake and only her best friend acknowledged her birthday. So she's pretty much like that grade school kid where only one person comes to her party, except she's less pathetic because it wasn't a family member. It was actually her friend. So, yeah, Billy Kay is my low shot because just a really shitty night for her, apparently.
Aren't best friends wonderful?
Yeah, I guess.
All right, well,
sold that?
Yeah, of course, of course. My low shot is actually going to be I'm trying to decide who out of that. You know what? Screw it. I'll just make the whole team my low shot. My low shot is Cassius Ohno and Hideo Itami because they lost because of a miscommunication, and now they're going to end up hating each other's faces because of a miscommunication. So yeah, not a good night for either one. I guess you could argue that Itami had the worst night because he did get pinned, but he was also protected in the sense that he didn't really, like in a one-on-one situation, he wasn't really beaten. He was just deceived in a way because of the blind tag.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. That's why my heart was hesitant. I was originally gonna say Hideo, and I'm like, no, I love him. I don't want to. So yeah, but I figured you would because just kill everything.
See, and I thought that what you were referring to when you said with a heavy heart, I thought you were referring to Roderick Strong because this was his last shot.
Like I give a shit about Roderick's dreams. I'm sorry you can't feed your child.
Wow, and here I thought. This was my mistake. I thought you might have actually had a shred of humanity in you still.
See, that was your mistake. Don't think. All right.
I literally just got done saying this was my mistake. You don't have to repeat it, okay?
I just wanted to reaffirm because if I didn't, would it really be psychological abuse? I don't think so. So, on that note, see, this is why you need to take notes from James. He is an excellent listener. He understands me. Everybody's like, how did you patch it up all of a sudden? But yeah, high spot. God, who do I go with for high spot? You know what? I'm gonna say my high spot's Killian Dane because much like McIntyre, he really hasn't done anything. And the interviewer actually brought up in McIntyre's segment, she broached Killian Dane's name. So I'm like, oh, ain't that some shit? So yeah, Killian Dane, he got the winning pin for his team. And apparently after that, he's in the conversation with the NXT title picture. So not a bad night for the Sanity member.
Apparently, yeah. You could have fooled me. I didn't even know.
Yeah, there you go. So
you're breaking this news to the NXT audience. Like, Killian Dane is in the NXT title picture. And I'm just like, wait. What? When? Since when? Why?
Yeah. Yeah, I really couldn't understand it either. That NXT title picture needs to get its shit together, although I will readily admit to being a hypocrite because if they ever, especially after all of his booking as of late, gave Andrade a championship match, I would totally look the other way. So I own my hypocrisy, but it's definitely something I want it to stabilize. I want us to get some real contenders. Again, Gargano, Black, Roddy was a real contender. I'm not going to knock him that hard, even though he is a failure as a father and as a husband. So yeah, it's slowly finding its way.
Oh my God.
I gave him a compliment. Oh, Jesus.
No, I know. We just need to move on.
I love how you're just so done with me.
Are you not seeing chat right now too? We just need to move on, okay?
Okay. Who's your high spot? You want to give Roderick a participation trophy?
No, of course. God damn it, John. No, my high spot for this week is, I mean, you know what? Screw it. It's Bobby Roode. I don't care.
Yeah. Oh, and who did Bobby Roode beat to be here? No, I'm not going to put you through that much. No, he did.
He took advantage of a situation that came up, and he was, I guess, aware enough to get his foot under the rope during a 3 count where he would have lost otherwise. And he was just, as far as actual in-ring performances goes, I'll actually go as far as to say this was probably his best NXT championship defense from a match quality standpoint yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would just like to point out, Bobby Roode, Canadian. Canadians are ruling the wrestling world right now. I mean, Bret Hart is pitching a fucking tent somewhere. So, yeah, Bobby Roode retains. And Roderick will have a long time to think about this.
I mean, dude, the funny thing is, even the Universal Champion considers himself to be Canadian now because he does reside in Canada, legit, Brock Lesnar.
That's right. Holy fuck, dude. Wow. Okay. Okay, well, yeah, WWE has a Canadian monopoly right now.
Holy shit, Jinder Mahal is Canadian too, and he's a WWE champion. What the hell?
Yeah, I'm telling you, Bret Hart, he's like reaching for that lotion, man. Like,
and who's the Intercontinental Champion? Someone married to a female Canadian.
There you go. Canada, man, it's just it's just running everything. It's just beautiful.
Who are the current Raw tag champs? Is it Sheamus and Cesaro?
It's Sheamus and Cesaro, neither of whom are Canadian, so way to break the flow there, guys.
I'm just trying to think of different people who are holding championships and figuring out their connections to Canada, okay?
Hey, man, I'm not blaming you. I was blaming Sheamus and Cesaro. I said, way to break the connection, guys, plural. I know you're still crying over Roderick Strong, but that was not against you just now.
I'm pretty sure the Usos aren't Canadian.
No, I'm pretty positive. All right, well, do you have anything else you want to say about tonight's episode of NXT?
No, I'm done. My mind is blown from all of this Canadian dominance. Oh, and yeah, that's another thing, too. Cesaro is best friends with Tyson Kidd, who is Canadian.
Yeah. Oh, Canada, motherfuckers. Oh, Canada. So, with that said, shut up, Ellsworth. With that said, what a fine episode of NXT this was. Yeah, this has been NXT. This has been TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John. That's my co-ordinator commentary, Ashton. Guys, be sure to comment, subscribe, and like the video. I see 6 people are watching right now, only 3 thumbs up. Come on, be a Tommaso Ciampa and shove that thumb up this video's ass, because the more likes we get, the more likely we are to be the top search result for NXT reviews on YouTube. And when you're the best at what you do, the top is the only place that you belong. So be sure to leave that like. As far as everything else goes, guys, you know how this works. All of our media is in the description box. Everything from our Twitter handles all the way to the TWitWoW Teespring store, where you can find amazing TWitWoW merch and Scum Squad merch to boot. My friend Ash has some amazing t-shirt designs on there, including, of course, one of our favorites, Because He's a Father, damn it! And, so a lot of great selection there. And, guys, beyond the media, let me just plug the stuff that I got to plug. I'm going to start with the Patreon first. As you guys know, we've removed the review tier on Patreon, so now it is simply a review and live reaction bundle.
I mean, they can also, for what it's worth, John, they can also just get a live reaction. The live reaction alone is also available, and that's the $10 per content hour tier, and then the live reaction plus review is the $15 content hour tier.
That is true. That is true. So even if you're not interested in a bundle, and I've heard plenty of people in chat say that they prefer live reactions anyway, the live reaction tier is still active. So yeah, even if you don't want the bundle and you just want a live reaction, you can just pay for that. But the thing I am most excited about on the Patreon, the things that really seem to be giving high returns, because I know we got new members a few days ago, and it's really starting to fill out, is the official TWitWoW Discord. Guys, if you want to talk about access, it used to be, I thought that Twitter was the most intimate kind of access we could give our fans. I think the Discord more than exceeds that, because you get to converse with us in real time. And I know on the TWitWoW Discord, because my coordinator commentary is a beast, he has got 3 separate tabs, like one for general discussion. You can talk about games, wrestling, whatever. Then there's wrestling talk, where that's where you'll find me. And we've had spirited discussions about the G1 US event, Monday Night Raws, the direction of the business. Are these indie guys working a safe style? Just so many great conversations that I just don't have the energy to have on Twitter, because I go on Twitter anymore and it's like, oh, you have 49 notifications. And I feel like by then the conversation's lost. With Discord, I feel like I can keep my head. The conversation's always lively. You can always have a voice in there. I think it's amazing. I think it's one of the most worthwhile donations you can make, especially because, and this is something that I've really been trying to emphasize at the end of each review that we do when I get to plug this, there is a long-term benefit to this $3 a month donation, because the $3, so if you're doing $3 a month, give because it's the cleanest, you know, you do an even 10 months, that's $30. You can cash in for live reactions on a 3-hour show. You know, that's huge. So I think with the Discord, you're getting immediate consumption with this access to us, being able to talk to us about all sorts of things, and then your donation accrues to where you get, you know, bigger purchasing power, as I like to call it. So I think it's a win-win-win with the Discord, guys. And if you're not a part of it, please consider making a donation because we would greatly appreciate it. Now, as far as content goes, I'm going to go first in the distant future, then I'm going to go in the, you know, the immediate future. So I'm going to kind of work backwards. I want to plug Q&A. Q&A for this month, because we're doing it now the last Thursday of every month, which started last month. Q&A this month will be Thursday, July 27th. So you have got now officially 3 weeks, because it's after midnight now. It is July 6th today. 3 weeks to get your questions into Q&A. That is still a large, gaping window. You know, a fucking seagull can fly through that shit. Get your questions in. If you haven't yet, you have a multitude of avenues that you can exercise to get your Q&A questions in. More popular methods are tweeting at us. Again, our Twitter handles are in the description box. I have a pinned tweet specifically dedicated for receiving Q&A questions. And what I've started to do, starting from last month, is the moment I get your questions, guys, I record them and then I send them over to Ashton, and he just puts them a part of the bulk because he's got this like huge spreadsheet of Q&A questions. So yeah, you send me your questions, I get them down, and they're saved, they're locked in. You got nothing to worry about. I've already gotten a good handful of questions on the pinned tweet, but there's still plenty of time. If Twitter really isn't your style, you can wait for this video to process and leave a comment there with your Q&A questions. I know quite a few people have utilized YouTube comments to leave their Q&A questions. Or if you feel like, I don't want you guys to look all through, I want you guys to just have it immediately, get it down. The TWitWoW Facebook, which if you do finish, visit the Facebook page, please leave a like on the page. You can inbox us with your questions. I know that's Alex Foster's preferred method of interacting on Q&A. So yeah, the TWitWoW Facebook page is also another option. So there's no reason why your voice can't be heard on Q&A. Get in there, get your questions in. The cap is 4 questions per Q&A. I mean, the most recent Q&A, we got 70 questions, guys. It was insane. I don't know what we're going to do this month, so we may be playing with the cap again. But for the time being, it is still 4-question cap for Q&A. And you can divvy up the questions any way you like. You can ask whatever you want. You may feel like there are questions more unique to our personalities. So you may feel like, oh, this question's more geared towards Ashton, or this question's more geared towards John. Or, you know, if you want, you could just ask both of us, because what's better than getting 2 perspectives for the price of 1 question? So get your questions in. Now, let's look to the immediate future. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., I'm kind of doing things a little bit differently because I've got personal stuff going on this Friday. Got to get in my proper headspace. So Ashton was very accommodating. At 3 p.m. tomorrow, we will be doing Great Balls of Fire preview and predictions. We are going to run down this whole motherfucking card, people. Oh, in fact, I'll go as say, I don't know the last time I've been this excited for a Raw show, so I can't wait to talk about all of it with Ashton. And of course, the big main event, the Beast versus the Destroyer, Joe versus Lesnar for the Universal Championship. We're going to give all our thoughts about, you know, the build of these matches, what we think the outcome's going to be, because of course, all roads for the time being lead to SummerSlam. So it's going to be a very, very fun preview and predictions for Great Balls of Fire. And I'm glad that I can say that pay-per-view name without laughing. So be sure to join us at 3 p.m. I'll be tweeting out stuff, I guess, throughout the day just to make sure we get a packed house because I want all you guys there. So, yes, 3 p.m., Great Balls of Fire preview and predictions tomorrow. So, guys, with that said, that closes out our content for the night. All of you rest easy. We love you guys. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Tune in and peace out.